champions? It's Miss Holt here with you for another virtual art lesson. Today we're going to be learning about the element of art, space. Space is really important in artwork and it helps create really realistic looking art. So we're going to talk about a part of space which is called one-point perspective. So let's watch a video about one-point perspective, gather up our materials, and get on creating.
Perspective in art is a technique used to represent three-dimensional objects on a two-dimensional surface. It's like a primitive form of virtual reality. The goal is to trick the viewer by creating an illusion of space and depth that is so convincing that the viewer accepts it as reality, at least at a subconscious level. Example. Here's a painting by the artist Rene Magritte. Above the apple, the artist painted the words, "This is not an apple." On a subconscious level, our instincts tell us, yes it is, of course it's an apple, but we've been tricked. And it actually takes a lot of effort and concentration to remind ourselves that we're not looking at an apple. We're looking at paint smeared around on a flat canvas, that's all it is. And since we're looking at this painting on a computer screen, the illusion goes one step further. It's just pixels. That's the reality. But even though we know that, we keep seeing an apple. In fact, it's really, really hard to not see an apple. And perspective is part of what creates that illusion. Now let's talk about linear perspective. There are different types of perspective and different techniques artists can use to create perspective. Linear perspective is one type of perspective that makes use of converging lines and vanishing points. It's all based on one simple fact. Objects appear smaller as they move further and further away from the viewer. Eventually, the objects can get so small and so far away that they seem to disappear together into a little point. This is called the vanishing point. To draw with linear perspective, you simply start with a vanishing point and work backwards. In linear perspective, you can work with one-point perspective, two-point perspective, three-point perspective, four-point perspective, and even five-point perspective. In this lesson, we'll only be talking about one-point perspective. One-point perspective. Rule number one, establish your vanishing point. This can be anywhere on the page, and it can also be located off the page. The important thing is that you know where it is and that it doesn't move. If your vanishing point is high on the page, you'll have a high angle point of view in your finished drawing. If your vanishing point is low on the page, you'll have a low angle point of view in your finished drawing. Rule number two, if you have a visible horizon in your drawing, the vanishing point must be on the horizon, or the effect won't work. Your objects will appear to float away into the air, or they will dig into the ground. The vanishing point always needs to be on the horizon. Rule number three, all vanishing lines, in other words, all edges leading away from the viewer, should go to the vanishing point. Rule number four, every object you draw must have a surface that is facing you directly. There's no way around this when you're drawing in only one-point perspective. You need two-point perspective to draw objects or surfaces at an angle. There always needs to be a surface facing the viewer for objects drawn in one-point perspective. Rule number five, use light construction lines when you're building your drawing. You'll need to erase them later, and if you make them too dark, you won't be able to erase them completely. Rule 6. If you have multiple vanishing points and one-point perspective, the illusion of perspective will be lost. Only one vanishing point. And make sure it doesn't move. Conclusion. The more you understand this principle, the more use you can get out of it. For centuries, artists have created some truly astonishing illusions using one-point perspective.
So deodorant is a must for me, and I've been using the native eucalyptus.
All right, friends, now that we learned a little bit about the basics of one-point perspective, we're going to draw our own landscape one-point perspective drawing. Perspective just means the way we see things. So in art, we trick the viewers by thinking they see something that's technically not really there. Because just like in the video, the picture of the apple, in the writing above it says, "This is not an apple." It's not. It's just a perspective of how we can play on light and shadow to create the image of an apple. It's not really an apple. It's really just paper and paint. So for this drawing, you're going to need a piece of paper, a ruler, or any type of straight edge, a pencil with an eraser, and something to color with, crayons, colored pencils, or markers. We are going to be creating our one-point perspectives at home during a Wednesday video so that when we come back to school together, we can start a really intricate and detailed one-point perspective drawing. So this drawing that you're going to be making today is a practice drawing for when we come back together in school, so that you've already been introduced to the content. You already kind of know how to draw a one-point perspective drawing, but just when we come back together, we can make a really detailed perspective drawing. So on your paper, again, name and class code. As always, class code is the first letter of your teacher's name and the number of the grade that you're in. Flip that puppy over and we're going to start drawing. You want to first draw your guidelines. The guidelines are what's going to help you stay within perspective. So the first line you're going to draw is your horizon line. The horizon line is the line, imaginary line where the sky meets the ground. You don't want to draw your horizon line directly in the middle of your page. You either want to go a little bit above or a little bit below. I'm going to go a little above. And you're just going to draw right across. Make sure you're drawing very lightly with your pencils because we are going to be doing some heavy erasing later. So the lighter you draw, the lighter pressure you use, the easier you're going to erase. Draw a dot in the center of your line. That is your vanishing point. And the vanishing point is just a descriptive word to say where things seem to go back and vanish. So if you think about perspective when you're standing looking out at a landscape, there's a point where all the things, the road, the trees, the mountains, all look like they just kind of disappear. And that's just because they're so far away. So things that are closer to us are larger and more in focus. And as they recede or go back towards the horizon line or the vanishing point, they get smaller and more out of focus. So now we're going to draw lines through our vanishing point. You want these lines to go through the corner of your paper. You want these lines to go out through the corner of your papers and then out through the top. Now this line, these two lines here are the angles of which your buildings or your trees or whatever you're drawing, whatever's in your landscape, are going to follow. So none of your buildings are going to be taller than this line, and they're not going to be shorter than this line. They're going to follow right along with this angle. Your horizon line is a guideline for you as well. Usually in this line is where you'll put a river or the road. In this case, this is going to be where our road is. So to draw my road, I'm going to first draw some sidewalks. So I'm going to use the guideline of my horizon line and my vanishing point. And I'm going to add two more little wedges, almost like a triangle. Well, it is a triangle, not almost a triangle, it is. And these are the sidewalks of my road. So anytime you're drawing a one-point perspective landscape, remember things that are closer to the front of the page are going to be larger, and more in focus. Things that are farther away are smaller and a little fuzzier. When you draw things like a horizontal line, like the lines in the sidewalk, you're creating the illusion that those things are flat. So as your lines go back, they need to get closer together and more frequent. Frequent means more often. So you can see there's a large space between here and here, but as I'm going back, the space between my lines gets smaller. You just got to really pay attention to your spacing and to how straight your lines are, how horizontal they are. Because these lines don't go at an angle. These lines here, anything going horizontal side to side, should be parallel with your horizon line. So again, as you go back towards your vanishing point, your lines get smaller and they get a little more fuzzier. So they look more in focus here. And then as we go back to our horizon line, they get smaller. So in this particular landscape, I'm going to draw some buildings on one side and some trees. I might put in a fence and like a field on this side. So I'm going to start with the trees because I think they're a little bit easier and they help our brain kind of work around the idea of perspective. So we've got our road, we've got our sidewalks. Let's draw a fence. So again, I'm going to use my ruler. And if you think about a fence line, it's not usually right against the sidewalk. So this is going to be the bottom of my fence. This is going to be the top. See how I drew those guidelines? Now I'm going to draw my vertical lines of my fence posts going back. Just like the sidewalk lines, these are not angled. They don't go back to, they don't angle this way. These are up and down straight. And again, just like my sidewalk lines, as they go back, they get closer together. And there's more of them. So this is my fence. These are my fence posts. Back and back. You can already start to see the shape of my landscape kind of taking place. I might put one more line through my fence so it's like a farm fence. All right. Now for my trees. I always like to start on the side that's closest to me and work my way down. So I'm going to start by just roughly sketching out some curved lines of my tree. And then bring my trunk in and back out. It might overlap your fence, that's okay. So now I'm going to go again, roughly sketching out the shape of my tree. And then drawing the trunk. So just like the fence post, your trees, as they go back, the trunks are going to get thinner. They're going to be set back further. So this one ends here. The other one's going to end back here. So they're going to end further back, and they're going to get smaller. Parts of your tree might cross over that horizon line. That's okay. As long as you're following the general guideline as you move down. Okay. Now you're going to erase your horizon line because you're not going to see that horizon line through your trees. So you're going to erase that horizon line because it's, again, just a guideline. Okay. And remember, I'm drawing fairly light with my pencil because I am going to be using colored pencils to color this. So I don't want the graphite and the colored pencil to compete. So I'm drawing very light with my pencil, and then I will go back with my colored pencil and darken all of these lines. You also want to erase the guideline leading out to the corner because we don't need it anymore. So erase and then redraw those tree lines, those sketchy little tree lines. Like so, like that. Right? And then now we can draw anything you want to add. So like if you wanted to add a little bush right here, you can. Just remember the bushes are going to get smaller as they go back. Maybe there's a gap. Maybe there's a smaller bush here, and here, and there. So just marking out where I'm going to put these things. And I know it's hard to see because I'm drawing so lightly, but it will benefit you in the long run to draw light. So for our buildings over here, it's really easy to draw a 3D building once you have your vanishing point, horizon, and guidelines drawn. So again, I'm going to start on the side closer to me. And I'm just going to start right along here and draw a horizontal line right there. That's going to be the top of my building. And then I'm going to bring this line straight down. You can use your ruler for this if you want. I'm just going to freehand it. And then bring my line right here. So what I've basically done is just draw a rectangle. But remember, I'm not going above this guideline or below this guideline. Now I'm going to use my guidelines to show me the angle of the face of my house. So just like in geometry, each 3D shape or 3D form has faces. So this is the face of the house looking at us. This is going to be the face of the house that's going away from us back towards the vanishing line. So I'm just going to follow the angle of my guideline on both the top and the bottom. You want to make sure it's very precise, and then you're going to connect. Easy peasy. Erase your horizon line because you're not going to see that through your house or your building, whatever this is. Okay. And you can just follow the guidelines for your roof as well. So you bring the roof down, back this way, and cut it across there. You can draw some more houses leading further back, or you could turn this into a yard. I think that's what I'm going to do. To draw another house, you would do the same process. Draw your rectangle. Go along the guidelines. Bing, there's another house right there. Erase your horizon line. I'm just going to leave these two houses, and I'm going to leave the rest of that space open. But you could draw, like I could draw a fence for this house. Let's say it has a fence. Going back there. And back this way. Now, to add details to your houses, windows, and doors, anything on the rectangle is going to be horizontal and vertical lines. Anything on the face needs to follow the guidelines of your vanishing point. So if I wanted to put a window here, it would just be a normal rectangular window. Maybe it even has some of these details in it. But if I wanted to put a window on the front of the house, the angle of my windows need to follow the angle of the vanishing line. So if it's up this way, if it's above the horizon line, it needs to follow the top angle. If it's below the horizon line, it needs to follow the bottom angle. And the closer to the horizon line that it gets, the flatter or more horizontal your line is going to be. The ruler is really helpful here because it keeps you on track for your angles. Same thing for your door. So if your door is below the horizon line, it's going to follow that bottom angle. You also want to think about the height of your door. You don't want to put your door way down here because you got this giant window. You want your door to be big enough for the people to walk through. And again, vertical line down, vertical line down. Now you got a front door. Beautiful. A little handle. You can add all kinds of details to these pictures. You can add a little walkway. Just remember, anything that's going horizontally needs to be nice and even, no angle, like that. You could add things like bushes to the side or front of the house. Same thing for your next house. If you have just remember to think about the size as you go further back. These windows are going to get smaller. The angle of your door should follow the angle that goes through the horizon line, the angle of your windows, do the same thing. If it crosses the horizon line, like these windows cross, the bottom angle is going to go down. Top angle goes up. And like that, you've got a 1-point perspective little neighborhood. You could add your little lines to the middle of the road. Remember, they're just further apart as they get closer. They get longer. As they get closer, they get longer, and there's more space between them. You can add a little sun. Remember, though, the sun is not a pointy death ball in the sky. It is just a ball of light. So we're not going to draw spikes coming off of our sun. We're not going to draw a smiley face because this is a realistic drawing. We're just going to mark it by making a little circle. You could add a little bit of cloud cover if you wanted, just to make it more interesting. But clouds are not puff balls. They're not cotton balls in the sky. They're more organically shaped. We know that word. And then the last step for this drawing is to color it in. You can outline this. You could take your Sharpie or your black marker and outline this artwork, all of your pencil lines. Or you can just use your colors. I'm just going to use the colors on this. I'm not going to outline this drawing with Sharpie because I want this to look a little more realistic. And in real life, things aren't outlined in Sharpie. So I'm going to color this, and then I will see you back in a minute. Friends, I hope you enjoyed creating this 1-point perspective drawing with me today. If you would like for me to see it, please bring it to school. I would love to look at it. Remember, when we see each other again, we'll be creating a much more detailed 1-point perspective landscape. See you then.